Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I am James Welsh. I'm the director of the Florida Center for Instructional Technology, and I am going to talk to you a little bit about using the TIM tools to support your dissertation work specifically. Now, we have other presentations that we've done about an introduction to the TIM as a model of describing technology integration in K-12 classrooms. And we have presentations that are an intro and overview of the TIM tools. Those are the data collection instruments that we're talking about. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those topics, but not too much. There are other presentations you can find that will go into more detail on that. Also, I'd be happy to go into more detail with you individually if you'd like to contact us to set up a meeting. Over the years, many people have used the TIM as a basis for doing their dissertations. And there are a lot of reasons, I think, why why it provides a good model for that. I am going to share my screen. Sorry. Almost there. And there we go. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So the technology integration matrix, again, not going to go into too much detail here, but the technology integration matrix provides a common language for talking about technology integration in K-12 classrooms and specifically focusing on the pedagogical dimensions of that integration. One of the reasons why the TIM is a good tool to use in your dissertation work, and here I'm talking about the TIM, not necessarily the TIM tools, the data collection piece, but the TIM as a framework, as a theoretical framework for your work, is that the TIM is based on so much previous research. The TIM incorporates concepts around meaningful learning and meaningful learning environments. So there's a whole robust body of literature about each of these underlying concepts: active learning, collaborative learning, constructive learning, authenticity, and here we're talking about involving the students' lives beyond the school environment, or the world, the larger world beyond the instructional setting, and goal-directed learning, setting a purpose for learning, monitoring progress, reflecting on outcomes. All of those things have rich bodies of prior research. And so, when you're choosing a theoretical model for your dissertation work, you want to choose one that has a solid grounding in the literature. And that is well describing the TIM. The TIM also involves those levels of technology integration from entry through transformation, and really there you're talking about a spectrum of different pedagogical approaches, from a very teacher-centered approach toward a very student-centered approach. So student-centered learning and student engagement also, from a research perspective, have a lot to do with things. But I'll say the other reason why the TIM makes sense as a framework when applied to dissertation research and other research, any kind of research in technology integration, is because it's not just a solid theoretical research framework, it's a solid practical framework. The TIM, while it is based on and grounded in prior research, is first and foremost a practical framework. The TIM was developed with educators hand in hand, out in classrooms, out in schools, out in district offices, and the development of the TIM involved teachers, principals, tech specialists, coaches, district staff, Department of Education staff, researchers at universities. All of those people had input into the creation of the TIM. And so it describes real situations that you see in classrooms. So it applies practically to what you see out in classrooms. It helps you describe what you're seeing out in classrooms in theoretical terms. It kind of creates that bridge between practical, actual classroom activity and the body of research that surrounds effective technology integration in classrooms. So that's specifically one thing. Now, this is what the TIM looks like. Generally, we're talking about 5 levels of technology integration contrasted with 5 characteristics of meaningful learning. There are other models that involve levels of technology integration, and most of those models don't have sort of the added dimension of characteristics of meaningful learning or some other set of concepts that are contrasted with those levels. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between the TIM and other leveled models. But I'll say that a lot of times with a leveled model, it will take you so far and not further because it doesn't have that kind of depth. With the TIM, the levels are there, and there is a sort of a practicality to having just 5 levels to talk about. So you can sort of narrow down and focus just on those levels, but the characteristics add a lot of rich descriptiveness to the work that you can do in the classroom. Now, just a note about the levels. When you're talking about the TIM, your unit of observation is, well, it depends on what data you're collecting, how you're analyzing it, I guess. But the unit of observation that we are most frequently talking about with the TIM is a lesson. So we don't, in our research and our writing, talk about teachers being at different levels on the TIM. We don't say we have an entry-level teacher or a transformation level teacher. What we say is that we have, in a lesson that we observe, that the lesson is entry level, or the lesson is adoption or adaptation level. The teacher may be capable of doing any number of, well, 5 would be any of the 5 levels, executing lessons at any of the 5 levels. You're observing one lesson. You can describe what's happening in that lesson, but you can't really describe the full capacity of that teacher. And so it's important to keep that in your sights. And so when you're talking about, when you're talking in sort of descriptive terms about the data that you're collecting in terms of observations using the TIM, you're talking about the levels that you've collected within the data, evidence of the teacher's capacity or evidence of the teacher's ability, not the teacher's ability itself. So you say you have evidence of the teacher working at the adaptation level. You don't say that the teacher is at adaptation level, as an example. Those levels, so we're talking there about the lesson. In a lot of other models, you're talking about different kinds of things. So let's say the SAMR model as an example. You're talking about an instructional task. That's your unit of observation. And so the TIM, as a contrast to that, is talking about an entire lesson within those levels. That's just an important distinction to be aware of. Other models have other units that they're talking about. So like the LOTI model or the RAT model, there are several different ones. They have different things that they're talking about. So keep that in mind when you're comparing different models, that they're not all measuring the same thing. But also, an important distinction is that the levels of technology integration that we're talking about here are talking about pedagogical differences and not about sort of how high tech the technology is, or how sort of not talking about difficulty level or anything like that. From the TIM, generally, entry-level lesson is very teacher-centered. The teacher is deciding which technology, when to use it, how to use it. Adoption level, kids are directly using the technology hands-on. Still, the teacher is deciding which technologies, when, and how to incorporate them into the lesson. Adaptation level, the students have some student choice, some choice in the technology that they're using, or some time built into the lesson to explore the technology. That's a really important change from previous sort of moving you from the lower end to the higher end of the matrix. The adaptation level introduces the idea of choice with regard to the technology tools that you're using, and starts to open up the landscape to higher order thinking. The infusion level, you have multiple technology tools available. The student's able to make meaningful choices between those. And at the transformation level, that is true. And also you're seeing things that would not be possible without the use of technology. So those 5 levels of technology integration are not talking about a limitation of the skill level of the teacher necessarily. What you're talking about is a spectrum of different choices. Now, separately from that, you can look at what choices is the teacher making. So if you did a series of observations in a teacher's classroom and you never saw anything above adoption, one possible explanation for that is that the teacher is not comfortable working above the adoption level. But another possible explanation for that is that on the occasions that you were there to observe, adoption was the most appropriate pedagogical choice that the teacher could make in each of those cases. Another possible explanation is that the instructional environment does not support work at higher levels. So it might be about the resources with which that teacher is provided, or the resources that that school has access to. So it's not as simple as saying this teacher is adoption, this teacher needs to be higher. It is providing information about the pedagogical choices the teacher is making, and then you need to go further and ask why are those choices the choices that are being made in that setting. I kind of bounced around several different concepts here really quickly, research concepts about what's happening there. Just to reiterate that point, that there is a research base behind every aspect of the TIM. And a lot of that research is published on our TIM website. So a good place to visit to start thinking about your dissertation research using the TIM is actually the TIM website. And on the research tab on the TIM website, you'll see that we have a page where we link out to research on the underlying concepts within the TIM, but also research that's been done using the TIM. And that research that's been using the TIM, a lot of it is dissertation research. So great place to start. Go read other people's dissertations that have incorporated the TIM. Go read the pieces that we've published about the concepts underlying the TIM, and the pieces that we've published about research that we've done using the TIM. Just to really briefly touch on right here at the end, the idea that the TIM is as we've said, a theoretical and a practical framework for describing technology integration in the classroom. The TIM evaluation tools are a set of data collection instruments. So the TIM is freely available, and there's information about the TIM on the website as a theoretical model. The TIM evaluation tools, that is a suite of software, data collection tools that we at the University of South Florida can license to you to use in your research. A license for the TIM tools gives you access to all of the tools within the suite to do all kinds of different data collection and reporting over the period that you're collecting data for your dissertation and defending and going through your dissertation. We've worked with a lot of people through their dissertations. We're happy to consult with you and advise you on the ways in which we've seen the tools used in the past. Again, a lot of that centers on the I'll just say really quickly here, the Technology Uses and Perception Survey, or the observation tool. There are several other tools, glad to talk about them in more detail, but the Technology Uses and Perception Survey works well as a pre and post intervention instrument. So you might have a group of teachers take the TUPS, looking at their perceptions of technology integration, looking at their comfort and confidence, how well supported they feel, what things they use most frequently. Give them the TUPS beforehand, do your intervention, and then give them the TUPS afterwards to look at changes in attitudes and in practice. The observation instrument also is frequently used for dissertation research. You can do a set of observations pre, a set of observations post, but you can also use the observation tool to give formative feedback to teachers and actually as an intervention itself. There's also, just to mention, a reflection tool, some other things, but again, happy to go into more detail and answer any specific questions that you have. If you are interested in using the TIM or the the TIM observation tools in your dissertation research, please reach out to us, and we'd be happy to talk to you. The email for contact is tim@fcit.us, and we look forward to hearing from you.